dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're back on Liberty Nation Radio. We're concluding our talk on universal injunctions. Now, we're with Scott D. Cosenza, Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, and he's been walking us around the garden, showing us the sites of or as Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson might say, the legalese of what has been taking place. That's a gag that only those of you who watched the whole show will know, or listen to the whole show will get. But I want to talk about how this lifting of universal injunctions ultimately affects the presidency right now under Donald Trump, and what that means going forward for the policy agenda he's put in place. So with the ruling coming down in Trump v. CASA, does that mean that the injunctions, the universal injunctions, the scores of universal injunctions that had been put in place were immediately lifted? Does it mean that the Trump administration can carry on doing what it's doing, or does it have to wait for it to go to see out a process through the appellate court? How does this work?
Yes, or the appellate courts too, on your country of origin. So all this ruling did was establish a decision for this particular nationwide injunction that was challenged, and every other one that is subsequently applied for. If it had already been applied for and granted, what a district court judge would have to do is reevaluate their granting of it, given this opinion. I imagine the administration has already filed in those courts where they have active litigation and we're anticipating a nationwide injunction or are working under one, that those courts do reevaluate it in light of the court's decision here. And they will be entitled to that level of review. And then also, just like we talked about previously, what that means for further review up the chain in the appellate courts, they'll face that as well. So it's not exactly like, okay, we're going to redo all these, but practically speaking, they're going to take another look at all of them, either by themselves, sua sponte, the judges themselves will do it, or they'll entertain a review filed from one of the litigants to do it in light of this court's decision. And that happens somewhat frequently, not with this particular issue, but just that the Supreme Court makes a ruling during their term that affects ongoing litigation, and the courts are adopting then to that, new rule or standard that they have applied.
So they're beholden to the new standard, because at some point, if they go against it, eventually it'll come back down with a
from 10 or 11 a.m. on Monday, June, 28th, that it came down. That's when
that's the new reality.
That's the new reality. Yeah.
There's a lot of cases that have had these universal injunctions. One of them was shipping illegal immigrants to third-party countries. So now the Trump administration can continue with that as a general policy, although injunctive relief might be granted to individuals who pursue.
Any particular person may go and say, hey, don't let them do this to me, whatever this is. And then presumably if they have met their burden before the court for an injunction against action against them, then the court will grant. They'll say INS, DOJ, Department of State, do not molest or go after this person unless and until they've had a hearing or, any number of other implements that the court might make.
So what does it mean for, and I think this is the most important question that people are considering, what does it mean for Trump's moves against birthright citizenship? Now, we did discuss this very briefly earlier, but so it's for people who are either in the country illegally or who are in the country legally, but are not resident in the country or with the proper right to remain in the country. And so because the original executive order signed on January 20, I'm just trying to get this right. It said within 30 days after this order, anybody born in the United States who is not, does not have a legal right the parents don't have a legal right to be here, or any of the other
Will
conditions
not be
we've
made a
spoken,
citizen.
will not
Right.
be made a citizen. So, as it stands today, at time of recording, there are now people who were born in America who are not considered citizens of the United States.
Well,
Yes
I
or
got the
no?
date wrong actually. It wasn't the 28th that ruling came down, it was the 27th. And
27.
the day of that ruling, the court said they were going to give 30 days, I think, for the lower courts to kind of work through these issues. And I guess also the administration would then take 30 days to kind of think about how they're going to implement it and what that means for, all the people who process births in this country. It's not like we have a central federal birth registry that, like, they can
That's so
just,
strange that you don't have that.
yeah, well, it's not because of how we came about as being
Mm.
these states being co-sovereign. And, we're now, ever since the Civil War, we've been marching ahead towards a kind of a unitary, the states are becoming more like counties, I think, rather than like independent sovereigns, which is, of course, what they were when the country
Sure.
started. And some of us have opinions about that and what it means for liberty, and wanting to get closer to that and devolve power from the federal government. But we're getting closer and closer to that federal registry every year. But in any case, it's a dispersed, field. And how do you get different actors to act and do what they have to do? Like right now, whatever has to be done for a person to be a U.S. citizen when they're born is pretty much nothing.
Yes.
They, if they ever want to establish that they are a citizen, they show their state issued birth certificate. So I was born in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I have a Pennsylvania birth certificate. If I need to establish that I'm a U.S. citizen, I can show my birth certificate, and that's all that's needed. Even at a federal office, they take the state identity document. Now I don't know what they're going to do. If you're born in 2025 in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania gives you a birth certificate, it's not like if you're from, if you're spending the summer in, I don't know why you'd spend the summer in Pennsylvania if you were like a jet setter, but maybe there's a nice lake there. There's plenty of nice lakes. All right, you're spending the summer at a lake in Pennsylvania, and you're from like Turkey or somewhere, for 2 months, and you're on vacation for a couple months, and you give birth. Well, why is that person, a citizen? Well, if they have a Pennsylvania birth certificate, they're not going to get a foreign country birth certificate if that birth can't even be verified because they're out of the country. These births are verified locally. How does the administration then present the federal government? How do they deal with whether or not this person's a citizen or not? Because it's not like hospitals check citizen papers. So then we have to establish, are the parents citizens or not? Do they have permission to be here or not? It's kind of a, that it's making that hash out is no joke.
Yeah. It's definitely it's an administrative challenge that there are so many strings to consider that I feel that each string will have a legal challenge attached to it.
Oh yeah.
So this
your children will be talking about this if they follow the news, the business of the Supreme Court, because you're right, every issue and then every sub issue, and they'll all go through up to the Supreme Court. Like we're going to be hearing about these cases for years, Mark, at least a decade, before they fine tune, because they don't have all these issues that they lock in. Like, okay, this sub issue, and kind of try to clean up all the issues with one decision. That's not how it works. It's the broad case. We're still fighting about. How many years has it been since DC v. Heller with the gun control? We're still cleaning up what it means to be able to keep and bear arms in this country.
It's going to be a full employment worksheet for lawyers in the United States.
Hey, cheers to that.
Scott Cosenza, thanks ever so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mark.
And that's all we have time for on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I've been your host, Mark Angelides. Special thank you to our guest today, Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, Scott D. Cosenza. And of course, thanks to you, the listeners at home, for taking the time each and every week to tune in on the radio and join us. You are appreciated. Please do remember, everyone, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation. And this presentation is no endorsement. Thanks for being here. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.